We will get started once we get a couple technical issues figured out. Good evening, everyone. Please stand to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the 2023 Borough School Board Candidate Forum. I'm Paige, and this is Kayla, and we will be your MCs for tonight. This forum is hosted by the Tri-Valley Junior and Senior classes. You may be wondering, why are a bunch of students doing this? Well, we want to allow our community members to hear what each candidate provides and how they can make an impact. Our student moderators this evening are McKinley, Pete, and Elizabeth. Our timekeepers this evening are Jack and Cordell. And our student technology leaders are Savannah, Paxton, Kenshin, Addie, Rosemary, Robert, Ben, and Wyatt, and Michael. We welcome school board candidates Jenna Ham, Michael Green, Tammy Oland, James Tench, Sarah Crowley, Kristen Randall, Christine Shreve, Rob Graham, and Dawn Adams. The forum procedure is as follows. Speaking order for questions will move left to right. Ms. Ham will be the first to answer the first question, and it will go down the line. Each candidate will have 1:15 seconds to answer each question. Each candidate will give a 1-minute opening speech starting from left to right. So we'll start with Ms. Ham first. Each candidate will give a 2-minute closing speech starting from right to left. So Ms. Adams will begin first. A 30 seconds left card will be held up. A red card when time is up, and an over 10-second buzzer will sound. Please hold all applause until all candidates are finished with each question. Many of the questions you will hear this evening were submitted by our local communities. Due to time constraints and rules that guide the type of questions, some questions may not be asked and others may have been edited.
We will begin the forum with a minute opening speech from each candidate. Ms. Ham, you may begin.
Great. Do I need to use the microphone?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I was wishing as I was driving up here and I feeling over caffeinated and having the nervous jitters that I wish in 8th grade that I'd been through one of Miss Marash's 8th grade SED Talk classes. So I could have started public speaking at an earlier age, but I'm delighted to be here tonight. I was also thinking about on my drive up, my background is in plant ecology and geography, and I could speak about those things very comfortably all day long. But geography is where things are, why things are where they are largely. And so I was reflecting on my way up about why our community is here, why the school is here, why this borough is here. And it's largely the tremendous natural mineral resources that are in the hills around us and the tremendous wilderness wildlife resources that are on the other side of the park boundary in this magnificent national park. And my time is up. Thank you, Cordell. It will go fast. That was a good test.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
I don't think you heard it. I don't think he's hearing.
Mr. Green, you may begin. Ms. Oland, you may begin.
Hi, I'm Tammy Oland. I know a lot of you out there in the
Hello,
community.
Healy. I cannot hear anything that's taking place.
We want to go back to Mike.
Healy, I cannot hear you.
Good job. Go.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm been told to go by my support team. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Green. I'm currently in Houston. Have a scheduled client engagement here in Houston. I appreciate the ability to participate via Zoom. I hope you can hear me. Why am I running? Well, I'm running to bring a voice to the board that comes from a place where I believe that parents want to teach their children the values and what's important in life at home, and that the school should educate them in the basics of reading and writing and arithmetic, if you will. I'm also running because I'm worried of the scores according to the Alaska Department of Education. Healy is currently at a very low level for the English language arts. Their score out of 100 is currently 46.9%, and for mathematics, it's 37.8. So I'm running to bring back focus on the fundamentals of education because I believe the board has lost focus over what's important and the basic relationship between parents and the school.
Thank you, Miss Olin. You may begin.
Okay. Really? No. So
Just
I'm
to give the AV people a word of what I can see, I can't hear or see, just so you know.
I have two children that have graduated from this school. We originally came from Oregon. It'll be 8 years that we've lived in this community in January. And I have been a substitute teacher in the district. I've worked in a lot of the different businesses in the area, have started a few of my own, have an interest in building this community and the communities involved with this district. We have lots of needs. I have sat in lots of meetings and heard lots of people talk about those needs. What can we do to help do that? What can we do to help train our kids to come back to this community? Are we giving them skills to learn and live and grow and stay in these communities? I'm very people oriented. I like collaborative projects and people that do that. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight and thank the students and teachers and staff that have all made this event possible. For those of you that don't know me, I know a lot of you out there, but for those of you that don't, I've had the honor of serving on our school board for 11 years now. And I can honestly say it's some of the most rewarding work that I've ever been involved in. I'm the proud father of two accomplished Tri-Valley graduates. And it was actually years ago that when my wife and I made the decision to put down deep roots and raise our family here, it was largely because of the school and the community. So I love living here in Denali. It's important for me to give back to the community that's given me so much. Thank you.
Miss Crowley, if you can hear us, you may begin.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right. Hello, I'm Sarah. I am excited to be a part of this. Jenna, I am nervous too. So, yeah, I just want to say that I'm excited to be a part of this community. I moved to Denali in 2008. So I've been here about 15 years. And I've lived in McKinley Village for about 10 years and in Healy now for about 5 years. So that's kind of a little of my background of the community. And I've worked in education actually throughout that whole time. So at a couple different organizations. I've been working in education and I have a career in education for the last 20 years. So a master's in education in curriculum instruction. But also, one of the other things I was doing was actually living in Fairbanks for part of the year, for a couple years. And I was running a teacher professional development program. So I've worked with administrations all over the country, with teachers all over the country, just trying to get the best out of the teachers that we have and making education for students around the country as best as it can be. So I have a lot of different varied experiences that I would love to be able to share with our community if this is the right place to do it.
Thank you. Miss Randall, you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Randall. For those that you don't, for those of you who do not know me, I must be a little bit nervous too. We moved here, our family did, in 2014, and my husband and I have graduated 3 of our children from Tri-Valley High School, and they are currently attending universities in Utah. And they have valued their education while they have been here in Healy. I have 2 other kids who are currently attending here and are also, I feel like, receiving a good quality education. I have been on the board for 6 years and have been serving on the finance committee for 6. I did 1 year on the curriculum committee and have had the opportunity to also participate in the negotiations committees with the school district. And I have had a great time serving on the board as well.
Hi, I'm Christy Shreve. I've been here since 2011. I have 4 kids. 2 of them are Tri-Valley students, and I plan for the other 2 to join when they're ready. I've been on the school board for a year, and in that year, I've learned how much I don't know and how much I need to learn, but I'm really excited to be a part of it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity I have. And I've been able to be on the policy committee for the last few months, and I've really enjoyed my time learning about those things. And I really look forward to serving for longer. Thanks.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Rob Graham. I'm a graduate of Tri-Valley High School back in '95. I had 2 daughters that have graduated from Tri-Valley / Peak. And whenever I was serving as the EMS director and then the fire chief at Tri-Valley Fire Department, we started a cooperation with the school to teach emergency trauma technicians within the high school, and then bring them on as an intern for the fire department. So more of the vocational education part of things. And I saw, out of those people that had attended and went through that, almost all of them have went into medicine of some fashion. So the reason why I'm running is I think that we need to take a look at our test scores and our education model, and we'll see. So thank you guys. Thanks for coming out.
My name is Dawn Adams. I've been on the Denali Borough School District Board for 6 years, almost that whole time on the policy committee, which I have an inordinate amount of fun at. The 2-hour meetings that we have every month, so we can work through all of those policies that help guide the school and the school district, and also dove into finance this last 3 years or so to understand that better. And I think we've really made an investment in the Denali learning model, and that's part of why I'm here and why I want to continue to serve on the school board. I think you figure out the process and how school boards work after a certain number of years. You're in it, Christy. And I also think we need to advocate at a state level, and that's where you start to really get your stride as you figure out what it means to get more money into the schools from the state. And I look forward to the additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question for the night will go to Mrs. Ham first, and it comes from McKinley.
What are the most important goals for the Denali Borough School District in the next 1 to 3 years, and how would you plan to implement them?
Thanks, McKinley. So on the website should be accessible the list of district priorities and board goals that the board passed in this last August for this school year. But I would call out how those differ from last year based on some perceived needs, largely that revolve around communication. So, and those would be a focus on increased outreach and communication about Denali learning, increased linkages between achievement data and evidence and our program of instruction, that being Denali learning. Increased feedback opportunities for community and parents on all aspects of the district to help us as a board inform our decision-making and our priorities. And the other was regards, had to do with ensuring teachers are engaging in Denali learning and being also professionally supported to do so. Implementation is not my job. That is the job of our superintendent, and but generally implementation is through board decision making and providing direction to the superintendent.
Thank you. Mr. Green, you may begin if you can hear us.
Thank you. I can. Appreciate you. To answer your question, number one, it's around enrollment. That's my number one focus. There's a reason why homeschooling students has gone up. That's because if you go back in time during the COVID mask mandate, the board sent out a survey monkey asking should parents allow their kids to be masked or not. It's up to the children or the parents, excuse me. And over 70% of the parents said, let the parents decide. 2 weeks later, the district said no to that, and then ultimately went against the parental thought process, over 70%, which is, in my opinion, not necessarily democratic in any way. So I want to make the school board, I want to invite parents to believe in the school board again by bringing a voice of open mind and a level head to it. Also, I would like to check out understand the education and what are we doing about the scores currently. The scores are horrendous. And what can we do about that? And also curriculum. How are we supporting the Denali model? It's been since the strategic plan of 2021, 2026 is when it ends. Let's look at it. I'm not saying we need to change it. I'm just saying let's look at it and understand what's working, what's not, so that we can either A, improve it, or B, change it.
Thank you. Ms. Olin, you may begin.
I believe the highest goal is competency. We have seen a lot of different methods and models and things come through the district in the last 8 years or so, different styles of testing, that sort of thing. But we're still seeing only in 2022, 73 of our student population tested. And out of that only 50.66% were found to be proficient, which means the other half weren't. Better identification of students' needs, aptitudes, learning styles, direct interventions at the school involving the parents to help at home, I think will equip our students for better success in this school process. Standardized testings are not the end all, but it's an indicator that a significant percent of our students are not achieving at grade level. And that means that we're either not identifying their needs or we're not giving them the tools that they need to succeed. And that comes back to all of us involved in that process, parents included. So thank you.
Thank you. Our district's mission is working together to nurture, empower, and inspire today's student to positively shape tomorrow's world. This mission was not just created by the school board, but it was a broad team of teachers, staff, parents, members of the community. It was a collective vision put forth by everyone. That's what we wanted, not just a board vision. And I'm committed to carrying out this mission by ensuring that the board maintains its focus on the strategic plan and completes the work that we've started on with the Denali Learning Instruction Model. I do recognize that we need to really enhance our internal methods for collecting, using, and how we share and communicate student performance data, because state testing data does not paint the full picture of student achievement. The state has changed the annual assessment model on us since 2015, I think 4 times now. We were for a long time running with the SBA tests, then it was the AMP test, then we went to the PEAKS test, and starting last year, the AK STAR test. We don't have apples to apples to compare in these tests to see if we really have long-term growth, long-term problems, and we acknowledge this as a board. So we're doing a lot of work internally to have better monitoring ourselves so that we're not so reliant on the state for this. Thank you. That's close.
Thank you. Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
All right. And I want to let you know I can't see the 30 seconds or anything like that. So just yell at me if I'm going too long, okay? So I agree with a lot of you in terms of the specific goals of supporting teachers and feedback from parents, community members, and being that conduit for those voices. And then hopefully using what I can bring as a synthesizer, as a listener, to then kind of gather the information that's needed, that data, that research, finding out how we can use it best, giving that back to the community, whoever it may be, and then hearing them and bringing it back. So not here to sort of bring my own agenda, but to synthesize and give voice to that whole school community. Yeah, that's kind of the basics of what I feel like I can offer to it.
Thank you. Mrs. Randall, you may begin.
Thank you. I think one of the goals that I have for the borough is in relation to budget and money and funding for our schools here in Denali Borough. I want to make sure that we are fiscally responsible for that money that we are given. I want to make sure we're making wise choices in how we spend that money. And I hope that along with my other school board members that we can advocate for the funding that we need to make sure that our students, our teachers, and our staff are given the resources that they need in order to educate our children. And that's kind of where I come from, being on the finance committee for so many years. But I feel like sometimes the struggles that we have within this borough tie back to finances and how are we going to fund these opportunities for our children, so that we can make sure that we are educating them in the best possible way that we can. And that's investing that money into our staff and our students and making sure that we have the teachers that want to keep coming back to the Denali Borough School District every year.
Some of the goals I had written down were some that we had discussed as a board back a couple meetings ago. There were a lot of communication goals. I was part of why I got onto the board last year was because I was a parent and I had no idea what Denali learning was, and I didn't understand, I didn't know, and teachers would talk to me about it, and I'm like, this is all way over my head, I don't understand. And so one of the goals I'd like to kind of highlight is the administration has implemented Pie Night with Mr. G, and he's been doing those things to help educate people about Denali learning. And I hope that, and what I want to see, I would like to see that continue. Another goal I was wanted to kind of talk about was the surveys, like with the information we're given, and to get surveys out and to get information in and to use those things to better our school district. I also wanted to one of the goals, I was a part of the strategic planning committee in 2021. Wow. Anyway, and one of the goals we talked about at that meeting was having our high school students when they graduate to be successful with whatever they choose to do. And I know that some of the ways that we're trying to make those goals come to fruition is we're offering after school classes, we're doing internships in the morning, we're trying to get kids to be prepared for the next level. Thanks, Cordell.
How's it going? Hold on here. Yeah, the goals that I would like to see is essentially everything that Mike said, so I'm not going to repeat that. But you know, since 2019-20, we've lost 30 students due to some of the political things that were going on out there and the way that the board had the way that they handled that. And that, when we talk about financially, that's $300,000 per year that we've lost since 2019-20. So if we're looking at wanting to see more money come in, my number one goal is to go after those kids that left the school or those families who are no longer, because I'm one of those families who pulled them out of the school. I didn't just pull them out of the school, I pulled them out of Peak. I put them in IDEA because I was completely against the way that stuff was handled. So I say that we go after those families, we go after those kids, but the way to do that, in my opinion, is we have to look at the learning model that the students are going through right now. I'm not saying do away with it. I'm saying we have to look at it because there's a lot of the reasons why parents are keeping their kids out of school is because of that. So those are my goals.
Thanks. I guess I would respectfully disagree that I think a lot of changes happened in our community and the world during the period of COVID, and families made changes, physical locality changes for a lot of different reasons. I'm not sure we can directly point to the school board for all of the loss of those 30 students. The school board goals that we worked on a few months ago include using student achievement data and evidence when making decisions. And so part of that evidence is not just the test scores, but the celebrations of learning, the student-led conferences, the other assessments that are done, the other opportunities that students have to participate in authentic learning experiences. Those are the things that can't be measured on an objective scale. And it is subjective, and it's not a model that maybe every family is comfortable participating in. The other part is something that Jenna mentioned, and that's communication. And I think the board recognizes that we could definitely do a lot better with communication. And I think education works both directions. Thanks. Do I get the first shot at the next one?
Okay, our next question, we will start with Mr. Green, and it comes from Elizabeth. What items in the budget concern you most? Why, and what is your solution?
Thank you, Elizabeth. My first number for the biggest concern for the budget is student
Okay, Ms. Oland, we'll start with you.
Thank you. My biggest concern is the amount of money that we're spending on students and the return that we're getting for our investment. Similar to question one, I think we can do better at assessing the needs and finding creative ways to meet them. Our teachers, our students, our parents deserve that. We should be very accountable for the money that we spend and looking at the outcomes that are a result of that. From 2014 to 2020, enrollment went from 888 students to 1,216 students, and yet the cost per student went up as well. Quality education does not have to be expensive. We are resilient. We can do so much better. I think we need better transparency of spending and higher levels of fiscal responsibility to identify budgetary areas that can be reexamined and reduce those costs. Our student scores and our student performances are not terrible, but I think they can be better. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Green, if you'd like to go.
I believe you asked for me. My number one concern is enrollment. I believe enrollment will support a lot of answers or solutions to the problems that we currently face. I believe we get enrollment through better communication to the distinguished leader of the board. I think it's a little too late to say this or that. It's time for action, and it's time for a voice of reason. Also, the budget concern that I have is what are we doing with our money towards understanding what's most important to the horrendous school scores, and how are we budgeting for those scores to go up? That's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you. My biggest concern is one I have almost every year, and we fight very hard for this every year for you. We go to Juneau and we are your voice. But my biggest concern is continuing to secure adequate funding from the state it's a hostile environment, and they are our single largest source of revenue to run our schools with. Since 2017, we've been flat funded with a few occasional one-year bumps, but you can't plan long-term plans and strategies around that. We have to continue to put pressure on the state legislature. We do have advocates there. We just have to use what we have. Additionally, I want to make sure that we continue a very healthy relationship with the borough. There's the potential for a lot of change in the borough seats, new mayor, and we have to have a highly functional working relationship there that understands the value of public education and the role they have in their local borough contribution to our budget, because we couldn't run the schools without them. We absolutely depend on the borough for that.
Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
Yeah, it's fun to hear all the pieces because I agree with little bits of each person that's been speaking. I would have to first say that there is so much context behind what turns up in a fiscal report, and what the numbers look like, and how we can get to those things, having worked with multi-million-dollar budgets in the past. It's like, but it's not that simple, those little things. So thank you to those who have been working on the finance committee all along. I think probably what I would want to focus on is looking at making sure there's teacher turnover, because just as we've lost students, we've lost teachers in the past few years, and trying to find a way to proactively keep teacher retention, keep those people here, keep them appreciated, support them. Certainly don't take for granted those that have stayed. Having worked with teachers who've been in classrooms for 20 years, those folks need that support, even though they've been there that whole time. And it can be so much money to then go out and search for new teachers, retraining, that sort of thing. So I would have to say in the short time, that's probably most important. We don't want to end up in a situation where we can't fill positions.
My biggest concern with the budget is the lack of funding in the BSA. Like James said, we have been really flat funded for lots of years, but costs for insurance, cost for supplies and parts, and other insurance costs, electricity, so heating and fuel has all increased, but the funding that we have received has not increased. And so those are costs that the district cannot necessarily always control. We can't control what the heating is going to be. We can't control what the insurance premiums are going to be. And so sometimes we're caught in this situation where, yeah, we want to do a lot of things, but our hands are tied because of that. And so and with the community's help, need to continue to advocate for that funding into the public education system here in Alaska. I do believe that it's very important, and I feel like, yes, getting kids back into the school is very important, back into our correspondence program. Those are all very important things, but we need to do our work. We need to advocate for the education of our children.
Thank you. I actually will probably just echo what has already been said. We don't receive a lot of, the flat funding from the BSA was mentioned, and was something I was going to talk about. And then I know that our superintendent, business manager, and finance committee I've never known anyone to analyze and overanalyze a budget as much as those people have. And so I know that they're doing the best that they can with what we have. But so it's something that we can do more is like what they've said, is to go to Juneau and advocate for more funding, to continue to reevaluate the budget if that's what needs to happen, apply for grants, which our administration does, and we've received some grants, which has been great. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so as I was looking at the budget and just the issues that have arose just in the last 3 or 4 years with the cost of a lot of things, including heating, fuel, and everything else doubling, and money not going up, that advocacy at the state level it's a must. I mean, we're doing that with Interior Region EMS in Fairbanks. We're having to do it with most nonprofits right now at a state level to try to keep afloat. But the other thing, again, is going after the students, in my opinion, going after the students that have left, the families that are no longer associated with the Denali Borough School District, trying to get them back in there. And then just smart funding. I mean, there's just some things right now that we're not going to be able to do because we don't have the funding for it. And so, you know, we can look at community sources to bring in some of these things. I know in the past we've had cooperators agreement with Usabelli Coal Mine and other organizations in the past. GVEA was also one of those cooperators for education with the kids, as far as getting them education on the job training and whatnot. And so I think that advocating at a state level and getting the community involved in that's important.
I'm going to agree with some of the colleagues that have already spoken and community members, candidates. The BSA is important. It's not just our school district, it's other school districts that are losing children out of the state. It's an out migration because the state is not funding its education system, and that's from elementary on up. Now, the one exception is the preschool grant. So the administration was able to score an amazing preschool grant to build a program from DEED, from the Department of Education, except we're having a hard time meeting the expectations of the grant, and we need a teacher who has preschool certification. So if you know anyone out there, there's a vacancy with a lovely program that's ready to build from the ground up. That will help us create the opportunities, the ladder in the Cantwell and Anderson communities that have been receiving less students coming into the school district, and help us keep those schools viable and an important part of those communities. I'd also like to highlight something else later.
Thank you. I'd echo what has been said. I think the fact of the matter is it really comes down to state funding. Our district in the prior 7 years was flat funded, and we all know that the prices of everything go up every year. So legislative advocacy has been a commitment of this board and our superintendent for an increase to the BSA that will sustain public schools throughout Alaska. Part of our advocacy also revolves around the desperate need for a stable state fiscal plan. That's part of the bigger picture here on the legislative side, and fully funding the major school maintenance fund. One of the concerning things to me in the immediate is the fact that there's maybe $280,000 in the school's capital improvement projects fund, and that is a place where we have reserve money to deal with maintenance priorities that crop up inevitably at our 3 aging schools. So that's an immediate concern to me that relates back to the major school maintenance fund and to state funding, and so legislation and advocacy is what it comes down to.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mrs. Olin first, and it comes from Pete.
Is school consolidation into one regional school a solution for budget shortfalls due to dwindling enrollments and revenue? Are there better solutions?
Thank you, Pete. This question's been on the table for quite a while. It's been put off and kind of passed around and that sort of thing. I think putting it off further is just going to make the decision for us. I suggest pursuing community partnership-based solutions in the specific Anderson and Cantwell communities. Advancing more streaming technologies and online capabilities, looking at serious examinations of policy that has driven many of the homeschool options out of our brick and mortar schools, and an in-depth study of the market value of what our district has and could develop to draw those customers back. Anytime, and all of these solutions need to be considered with students first and foremost, and also the need of the specific communities in developing that process and involving them in those conversations and in those processes to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, consolidating the district schools into a single site is it's not new. We've had to deal with this for several years, especially as Cantwell and Anderson's numbers have hovered around that minimum 10 students to be considered a school. Below 10 students, the state no longer considers your site a school. So, but it gets complicated because it's not just as easy as closing them, because we actually make a lot more money revenue-wise from the state having 3 schools, because the way the funding formula works, we get hundreds of thousands of more dollars to support those students when they're counted at 3 sites instead of 1 single site. So the formula gets a lot more complicated when we have to think about the pluses and minuses of closing those. We also have to think about just the collateral damage that happens if we close a school. First of all, some of the savings just aren't there because these buildings are not designed for long-term mothball cold type storage. We have to keep minimum heating on. We have to have some maintenance staff that can make sure everything's okay in those buildings. So there's cost with that. And there's also other uses of these buildings. They serve as our public libraries in these schools. They're the heart and soul of these communities, really. And if we shut them down, we basically close the door on them. They lose property values, everything starts to implode. So it's a deep question that's far beyond just students. Riding along.
Miss Crowley, you may begin.
Yeah, James, that's a lot of exactly what I was going to say. It was a bit of that. And, you know, it's been discussed during previous fiscal years and voted against. And I don't know every single reason of why and how, but that's what I want to learn and be able to back up, find potentially more research on what we can learn from other places. So I want to do that legwork. I haven't done it yet, and I want to help to just lend a hand in doing more of the work to figure out exactly the best way. But I think I agree most with the collateral damage, like you said. Sort of, it can erode the fabric of a whole community to take away not only the services that happen in the building, but that identity of how different our communities are. Thank you. That's very helpful. How drastically different all the communities are. So I think that's a really important consideration. Budget is number one in the question, but I personally think much bigger than that too.
This has been talked about lots in the finance committee, and I believe it was last year we kind of took it to, or 2 years ago, we kind of took it to the borough and the borough assembly. We had a joint meeting, and the borough was committed to keeping all 3 sites open. And there's a lot of reasons for that James talked about. You know, it's a heart of the community. Sometimes you shut down a school and you know that the economic development there just really goes away. And I have really been impressed as we held some open meetings last year and, you know, visited the sites, how committed Cantwell and Anderson were as a community to keep those schools open. And I've really seen a lot of those people in those communities step up to try and make a difference, to try and figure out how they can do that. Really what James said, you know, we've done lots of math, lots of calculations, and really the money savings really truly isn't there to uproot a community and students, put all those kids on the road system at this point. And it just has not made financial sense. And that the borough is committed, not just the school district, but the borough is committed to keeping those schools open.
You take all of my good thoughts, Kristen, but thank you. I was just going to say that we know that if a school gets shut down, the community shuts down. And for our borough, that's not a really good thing. We don't want to do that. We want to keep them up as long as we can. And we've been stretching the budget for the last few years to try to keep them going. And it's obviously worthwhile to the board. And I agree with that. I think, you know, I've been visiting in those communities recently a bit, and these young kids who are going to schools there, and how devastating and life-changing it would be for them if those schools did shut down. So thank you.
Yeah, this has been a point of contention for a long time within the communities. I do think it's not just a cut and dry answer to consolidate, but I do agree with, you know, what James was saying, as far as like whenever you have 3 schools, you do have a different math equation and everything that takes place. But at the end of the day, you also have to look at it this way: is like the school board not only is in charge of, you know, the education of the children, but they're also in charge of the business side of the school district as far as financially goes. And so you have to look at it and go, you know, are we making good decisions that are financially being that are financially the best for the communities, for the school district? Of course, we would want to keep those schools open as long as we can. I don't think anybody wants to come in and say, shut them all down, make one school. That would upset the communities and everything else. But I also think that as time goes on, if there's a decline in the buildings, if there's a decline in the maintenance, everything else, I mean, Cantwell has like 7 furnaces in their school. Stuff breaks down, money stuff comes up. So it's something that has to be continually reevaluated.
Thanks. I agree with a lot of what's been said, and we've sat in those meetings in Cantwell and Anderson and heard from those communities and how important those schools are, heard from the students specifically. I think it's also important to remember that we don't, you know, we have 150 kids in Tri-Valley right now, 10 to 12 in Anderson and Cantwell. We also have 750 kids that are part of a Denali Peak program, and that homeschool correspondence program is a lot of what helps us keep these smaller schools going. It helps that financial support helps us have that decision space to not have to shut a school down. I was really heartened to hear last night the assembly candidates recognize the problems that the school board has been facing, and are also looking for solutions. I just wanted to mention that Dan, Mr. Polta, the superintendent, solicited budget ideas from both staff and community about a year ago, and I can see things like those surveys maybe continuing in the future as we all look for creative solutions.
There'll be an echo in this room, but I think to specifically echo Kristen and Dawn, I think what we learned in the communities of Cantwell and Anderson, yes, from students and from community members, was that it's a better solution is to have a tiny school than no school. We heard that loud and clear. Realistically, I think there may be a tipping point that comes if enrollment decreases at those 2 smaller sites below 10 students. We were there in Cantwell for a while. Now we're not. We're getting close to there in Anderson right now. But I think a key, and this goes well beyond the capacities of the board to pull off, but efforts to boost enrollment are throughout the borough are key. So working with the leadership of CLEAR, working with communities, working with the borough on land and housing issues, marketing, doing a better job marketing our own homeschool program in other areas of the state. The universal pre-K commitment by the state of Alaska is a big one that that may help our funding picture going into the future as well. So we definitely look forward to how that evolves, hopefully within this year.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. 90 seconds. I want to say that I agree with most of what's been already said. It's time to do our very best to articulate to the communities what is it that we can do to bring in more of enrollment so that we have more students so that we don't have to worry about it. And until then, we need to continuously think about how are we showing up to not only our communities about what we offer at these schools, but also to the organizations around us. What can we do with our partners of the borough to bring in more funding, or what is it that we can do with the parents that are on the fence to bring their students in or not? So an outreach program, if you will, of listening to them even in a deeper level, almost like a stone soup thought process. This is the current situation. How can you help us help you rectify the situation? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mr. Tench, and it comes from McKinley.
As school buildings age, maintenance issues grow. What can be done to continue maintaining aging buildings, infrastructure, boilers, etc.?
Thank you. This is actually an area where this district has really excelled. The board routinely has maintained a list of capital improvement projects, and these have consistently ranked high on the state's CIP list year after year, and have generally been funded when we've asked. They're well written and researched, and that's made all the difference. Additionally, the board has set aside a district's distinct savings account that's specifically for capital improvement fund. And so this allows us to start some of these projects like the Tri-Valley roof, the Anderson project, the Cantwell roof, all before we ultimately secure this funding from the state. We know we're going to get it. It's just playing those games with the state to get it. So it also serves as a safeguard for us having this account so that we are well equipped to deal with emergencies, like if Tri-Valley's septic field decides to fail tomorrow, or we may have a boiler issue again, like we did in Anderson and so on. But we're well positioned for this, actually, and we're very fortunate in this regard, because a lot of other boroughs in the state aren't where we are right now. But this has been the results of a lot of long-term strategic financial planning in this area.
Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
Yeah. So, and you can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, there's a little jump there. So I think the collaboration between the borough, the new assembly, and the new mayor is going to be crucial in these things, because as I understand, technically the borough owns those buildings, which is, kind of harkens back to all the questions we've had about, keeping schools open for the community purposes as well. So making sure that all of those new assembly folks and mayor are all working collaboratively with the board and with the schools to make sure that all happens. And including additional partnerships if needed. James says, the money can come, but the additional partnerships are never that bad backup. Grant writing, the innovation, and if those things happen, the backup plans of what to do. If a school has X, Y, and Z happen, how do we best keep any instruction and learning from being disrupted? So in addition to, where's the budget coming from, but what's the big plan of continuing to be adaptive so that learning can continue to happen?
Well, I'm going to mention again the need for advocacy again. The state's school major maintenance fund is severely underfunded for the needs of all of the schools in Alaska. And so they start ranking our projects. There's this whole process and how your project moves higher up on the list and how you're going to get funded. I agree with James. We have been very fortunate as a district. We have made it a priority to set funds aside so that we're able to sometimes fund projects and pay for them and then wait for it to be reimbursed from the state. That's not an ideal situation to be in. And the state's fund is just very, very poorly funded at this point. My concern is that, we've been able to do this with the Anderson School. We replaced the roof. We got the funds back. We replaced the Tri-Valley School roof. We're still going to wait for those funds. We're hoping that will be funded this legislative season. And so that we can replace those funds. As funding decreases within the state, we may not be able to continue to carry that CIP here. And so we really need to make sure that we're advocating for more funding. Thank
you. I obviously agree with what has been said already. And I also just wanted to echo or just mention that partnering with the borough has been really helpful, and they've done whatever they could to fund and help pay for things like maintenance projects that we've needed help with. And so one thing that we can do is obviously to continue to keep that relationship going strong. But like it's been mentioned, it's a rough battle to get funding for a lot of these things. So thanks.
Yeah. One of the things that I wrote down is, the infrastructure of the school as they get older, it obviously breaks down. Right now, the Tri-Valley School is in need of a new gym floor. According to what I've been told, it cannot be sanded down and refinished again. Like that's what an outside source had said. So it needs to be replaced. That's $250,000. Where is that going to come from? Like, is there a way for us to go to not just the borough, because the borough is not just a pot that we go to for everything whenever we need something, but are there businesses locally that we can go to help support some of these projects? And the other thing that just because of the lack of time that I would say is like having all of the schools, whenever work orders come in, make sure that they're getting done in a timely manner. I know that just little things that came up. My wife served as the public librarian here for a while. And there were work orders that had sat for years that still hadn't get done. So having accountability on work orders that need to get done will also go a long ways in repairing things so that we don't have bigger maintenance bills in the future. So.
So we definitely rely on the staff and the district maintenance director to help identify the cyclic or the regular maintenance that needs to happen. We don't always have the money for it, and we don't always have the staff that's available to do it. We do review a 5-year maintenance plan every year, and they have to, like many have said, we're mostly reacting to issues that are happening, to urgent issues that are happening, and not necessarily getting to the regular maintenance that's needed. Another creative solution that again, we turn to the borough for some things, but I like the raising money for school gyms. That's awesome. It's a great idea. I think we got to do that. The Tri-Valley generator, the borough, the mayor, and assembly were able to procure some money toward a backup generator, an emergency generator for this school, that we haven't been able to move up that funding list. So that was a real positive thing that we heard recently. Yeah, thanks. Just gonna wait for Cordell.
I'll try not to use the word echo. I think to answer this question, I would take the opportunity to shout out the efforts of the superintendent. One, as has been mentioned already, to prioritize the staffing of a district-wide maintenance position. That's something our district went without for many years. And I think to a fault of the district. But with that position and a commitment to trying to staff maintenance positions at all the sites, that's been a key component of keeping up with projects. And Mr. Polta has also super prioritized the good working relationship with the borough because the borough can often chase after other types of grants that the district cannot. So maintaining a good working relationship and synergy there for chasing funding has been great. And advocacy. He's also always, when we're in Juneau, and he's in Juneau for other meetings, advocating for the Major School Maintenance Fund in addition to school funding, which is something, of course, the board can do as well.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. I agree with most of what's been has been said tonight. This is probably the question that almost there is complete agreement that we need to continue the relationships with the borough, prioritizing what's important, and also looking to what can we do as a community to fund things such as a gym floor, if you will, or at least to put out to the group or to the community saying, this is our list of priorities and this is where our current shortfalls are, so that everyone understands where we're at and what can we do in order to bridge the gap of those shortfalls. So again, I agree with what most has been said. I think that if we continue to articulate to the group or to the communities, this is what's taking place, or this is where we're at, this is the maintenance plan of the year, people will be better educated on what we're currently looking to work on. And also, this is what we can do if there's an issue. Numbers on a budget, when you look at it from your website, doesn't necessarily mean much to individuals. We need to better communicate with that. Thank you.
I have to agree with most of the sentiments that have gone around the table. One of the things that I really agree with Rob said is building our communities. The solutions really come back to what can we do for ourselves in these communities. And not to say that, state money or federal grants should not be pursued and applied, but creatively developing our own sustainability will be the longest run for our dollars in the whole process. One of the things that came to mind when I was down in Cantwell was, this is a tribal area. I come from Oregon, where there's tribes all over the place. I haven't done the research and the homework to look into what kind of resources are available in that bucket. But has anybody asked those questions? Have we gone down that trail? Have we looked at other things kind of outside the box? Community development, rural development often have different types of grants and programs to help small communities in facing some of these issues with facilities and that sort of thing. And also looking at the multi-use of our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Ms. Crowley first, and it comes from Elizabeth.
What is your understanding of the Denali learning model and EL education model? Would you continue with these models or move to something else?
So this is my background with a master's in education, is looking at the history of curriculum and the teaching practices that come with how to accomplish meeting the goals of a curriculum. And it's amazing to have sort of looked at the pendulum swing of what curriculum looks like over, the course of 20 years, 50 years, and 100 years. And, it's shifting all the time. So thus far, my understanding from the folks I've talked to get a sense of, how their students feel about it, how families feel about it, that it's working pretty well. But we have to have the data to back that up. We have to look at, not only the qualitative, but the quantitative of what are those scores, or are we meeting all the benchmarks, and then change it if it needs to be changed, which I know it takes so much work to do all of that. But the pendulum swings. And so I want to be sure that any of the curriculum is meeting the needs of the students and what they need, for career pathways that are diverse. I mean, we're going to talk about CTE in a bit, and critical thinking, and just pathways to either stay at home, keep the resources here of their learning, or go elsewhere. Thanks. Thanks for the sign.
I know that when we developed this Denali learning model, and as they went through the process of selecting EL education to support the work of the Denali learning model, there were teachers, staff members who did an intense dive into picking something. And I was very impressed as I listened as a school board member to those teachers to present on the different options and how they came to pick them. And I know that they did the work in order to pick what is best for our students. It always sits on our table, what is best for students. And I believe that those teachers, staff members, administrators picked what was going to work in the Denali Borough School District. I have seen them adapt and change as needed. You know, it hasn't maybe always been a perfect system, but I've seen them change. And I think that that's what's important, is that they know what is happening in their classrooms. They know what their students need. And time after time, I have seen those teachers rise to the occasion to do what is best for every one of their students. So thanks.
This is something that I know for myself I need to learn more about, but my thoughts on it are perspective of a mom, having students in Tri-Valley. I've been able to see one of my children in particular blossom a little bit, because I've learned a little bit about the Denali learning model is a lot about student agency and like their choice, and they're accountable, but they're also motivating themselves. It's a really, really unique thing. I don't know a lot about it. I have to be totally honest. I'm sorry. But with that being said, it's been great to see one of my children in particular flourish a little bit under it. And I've been really grateful to see that blossoming for my child. But I'm not saying that there's not other options or better ways. But I just need to really learn more about it. So thanks.
Yeah, so whenever I saw this question, what is your understanding of the Denali learning model? I went on the website for Tri-Valley School, Denali Borough School District, and you can't find anything about this model on the school district. So I had to do quite a bit of digging. I've heard about the EL education model, but I had to do quite a bit of digging to what it entails and how the curriculum and the structure of it is implemented. And from some of the research that I found, it actually is harder on the teachers. It brings in, if you will, and this is my opinion, this is why I'm running. It brings in social justice issues, racial issues, that kind of stuff that I think doesn't need to be in the school. I think education needs to be the highest thing as far as language arts, math, social studies, science. That needs to be the core of the education. And I think that, I mean, again, I understand what James says as far as the different models of testing that we've had, but the only data that we can find is actually on the Alaska State education system. And the Denali Borough in the last 10 years, because there's 3 years that we lost the records, but we've went from a 60% proficiency in language arts down to a 48%. To me, that doesn't sound like it's working. It sounds like it's declining. So Jack, do you want to blow that?
So what eventually became the Denali learning model is part of what brought me to the school board to begin with, when I was in that group for the retreat in Fairbanks, and seeing the commitment that community members had to the students and teachers and the school district in 2016. And then again, it was revisited in 2021, and it's evolved for sure. What Kristen mentioned, like investigating these different models of education. I liked what we did, because we didn't just pick one, pay the $50,000 and pull it off the shelf. We chose a little bit of what worked out of the different models that were investigated. And yes, most of it does come from expeditionary learning or EL learning, with a focus on mastery of knowledge and skill, high quality work, and character. Working on character traits. Those are things like growth mindset, collaboration, perseverance, creativity. And I think those are all things, no matter what where your student's going, that you'd like them to take forth and use in their life. Yeah, I definitely want to continue our commitment to it.
Ooh, this is the one I took most notes on, and I definitely won't get through them. You might have an opportunity to blow your horn, Jack. I think some historical context. Denali Learning sprouted out of a 2016 strategic planning, community member strategic planning process, and has grown. Certainly by 2021, at least, it was dubbed Denali Learning. Yes, I think it has been a little, we've observed that it has been harder on teachers. It's an interesting perception, but I think it has pushed teachers a little bit to adapt and to focus on learning that is more student centered. So definitely support it. I think the personalized focus, puts students in control of their own learning, that we see through, student self-assessment and reflections on their own learning. It's really the opposite of rote instruction, which has been proven not to work. Also appreciate how it's tailored to student interests and the needs of the workplace. I think the focus on culture and crew, is reflective of what's needed in the workplace. I know. I could continue.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. I believe it's a time to revisit, do a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, etc. for the Denali Learning. Denali Learning is based off of the model of Outward Bound. I've worked for Outward Bound all around the world, and I would beg to ask anyone of the school board, do you know what the 4 pillars of Outward Bound are? EL, much like if you go to the website, it's really difficult to get a definition. It's got to be more out there in front of the parents so they understand what this is. Yes, you can click on it and you get a wonderful model. However, there's nothing other than a model. There needs to be an opportunity. Having been part of the Pine Nights, having sat through, thank you very much, having sat through discussions on this, there needs to be out there more often. We need to reach out to the families and help them understand what is EL and what is Denali Learning Model, so we can have those conversations. And I believe if we listen to the parents and act as a board that is listening to the parents, will bring in more people to have better dialogue for people to understand what it really means for EL. It's time to check to see if it's working or not. Thank you.
I very much agree with what Mike's saying. As somebody new to this process, I was learning a whole new language, trying to figure out what EL means, what Denali Learning is. I didn't feel like a lot of that was very accessible to me. The things that are available on the website were charts that really don't define and explain the mission and the goal, and some of those things. And so, I went on a scavenger hunt and I started digging, and the roots of some of this thing, I think could be very disturbing, in the sense of what is this really founded upon? But in this terms of impact to our actual application of what we're doing here, I feel like the loss of students over some of this has really been the bigger issue. Rob said he thought that we lost about 30 students or so. My number was a lot higher than that. It was at 240 students. So that's a significant loss. And I think we need to address this model. Not that we need to throw it out, but really take a serious look.
Thank you, Tammy. Well, it's hard going last. You all have taken most of my talking points. I see this now, but I'm going to talk off the cuff a little. And I guess first and foremost, if I could highlight anything about Denali Learning, is that it did incorporate parts of EL education, especially back when we looked at this in 2016, but it does not incorporate all. We are not an EL school district, and this came up last spring. Are we following the whole EL model? And the answer is no. There are aspects to EL that came in, especially during the pandemic, about social justice and things that Rob referred to, but that's not baked into our model. That's not what we created, and it's unique to Denali here, what we've done. In terms of monitoring it, we are looking at better ways to test and see how we're doing internally, because this is not something that state testing captures. If I changed anything, I totally agree with Mike and others here. We need to do a better job communicating this to all of you about what Denali Learning is in simple layman's terms, not these charts and things like that. I agree. I think we've had this discussion internally before, and we know this. And this is an area of improvement that I'd love to see happen. So.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mrs. Randall, and it comes from Pete.
Poor attendance has always plagued our school district. Sports travel and Friday trips to Fairbanks for appointments will continue to feed this trend. Due to Denali's unique situation, would you support a 4-day school week with more stringent attendance policies? Are there other policies that could be implemented to tackle the attendance issue?
Thank you, Pete. Several years ago, we did actually do some investigative work on a 4 days a week for school, and kind of came right before COVID happened. But we did really do, I feel like people did really look into this. The administrators, we had a school board member at the time really look into it. And there was really minimal cost savings. So that's really not what was, would drive us. There was possibly an impact on student achievement, more days in front of a teacher, whether they, whatever it is, that consistency was really what was important. And I think really moving out of COVID, that to me is really important, is to have that constant in front of the teachers. Yes, we do travel a lot. Yes, we do have sports things. Yes, there are appointments in Fairbanks to be had. That is unique to our situation. There are school districts around the state who have tried to build that into their school calendar. And I think that has been important to help with some of that situation. That's probably something that we could look at and do a better job at. I do feel like student achievement equals teacher time.
I think I would support 5-day, 4-day. I like what Kristen was saying when she was bringing up, like when they kind of had some thoughts and had looked into it and had some comments to share from before. I didn't know that. I think at the end of the day, the parents should be involved with that decision. I know I had heard from a kindergarten teacher from a while ago that she said a long time ago for her, they were talking about doing a full day kindergarten here at Tri-Valley because there was two parents working in the home. They had a hard time with childcare after school if they got out at the half day mark. And that's why the compromise was set at the 1:30 p.m. kindergarten gets out of school. And so my first thought with jumping to 4 days a week, I think parents should be involved with that decision, because if there are lots of dual parents working at home, working away from the home, what will those students have to do? And I know that school isn't a daycare, but people do kind of set, build their lives up around that schedule. So I would whatever decision is made, I hope the parents are involved.
Yeah, for myself, I do support a 4-day school week. I do think not only the parents should be involved in a decision, but there needs to be a poll that's put out to the students as well, because that's who it ultimately is affecting. But then it goes down to like, how are you going to enforce that? Like with the poor attendance, whenever students are, if they're playing sports, there needs to be a policy put in place that where you have to have a certain amount of days that you're in per quarter in order to play sports, or per week, or whatever that is. I understand there's always, circumstances that arise, but a lot of times those circumstances that arise tend to be the norm and not the abnormal circumstance that arises. And then not only that, but then also the implementation of the consequences, or the implementing of that policy of if a student misses, then what is that implementation going to be for them, because we don't have good records as far as our attendance in school. And our school is very much a sports school, and most of our trips, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, they leave on Friday. So if we had a 4-day school week, we could do that easier.
Thanks. We spent some time on this recently in the policy committee, partly because of the chronic absenteeism rate that's across the country, and especially in Alaska. A lot of our communities run up against the same situations that we have with long distance to medical and long distance for travel. So that was good to be able to identify. Let's talk about what we're talking about. What is poor attendance? Is it parent sanctioned schools? I mean, kids out of school because it's parent sanctioned trips? Is it truancy? Like, do we have a problem with truancy? Let's figure this out. So we're looking at some different definitions of what absent is. I'm not for a 4-day school week at this point. It would mean an earlier start and later evenings. And I think some of our kids with sports and the way things are organized at least in the school, that would be really tough to have kids leaving so late. Attendanceworks.org. It's a great website for information about attendance. And one of the suggestions is create positive conditions for learning, and then recognize good attendance and when kids have improved.
Thanks. Yeah, our attendance data is, I think we're diving into the definitions now as a board through policy, but our attendance rates have been fairly high in the 90% range. We did do work evaluating 4-day school week. Other districts have found that it doesn't necessarily solve the attendance issue, nor does it solve achievement gaps. And a lot of what we discussed when we brought this up earlier is the challenge for working parents, especially with elementary kids when they're not involved in a lot of after school programs or activities. Likewise, through middle and high school, not every student participates in sports and activities to justify a 4-day school week. Attendance needs to be tied to incentives, as I see it, right? The carrot versus the stick. For middle school, high school sports and activities, I think attendance, we are beginning to tie attendance to the ability to participate in games and events and activities, which is a good incentive. Everyone wants to go on sports trips and activity trips. Also working with the borough about and other healthcare providers for robust dental and medical and mental health services locally would go a long way to solving some of the trips to town.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. I believe that number one, we ID and we discuss what are the definitions, much like the board has already begun to do. But the most important is to educate the community. Now, Mr. Gurley and the Pie Knights has been really good about getting the word out that, hey, listen, attendance is really important. These are the reasons why. We need more of that community advocacy and explaining this is what's currently taking place. This is what it means when it comes to advocating for more money, for example. Not only that, but also starting to think about, not necessarily go within the next year or two, but thinking about, much like a lot of the business is in America currently, thinking about output, measuring output, not just seats in the chair every 5 days of the week. Output. Student A has X amount it needs to do. If he gets it done at the end of the month, that's how we're going to necessarily measure if it's working or not. I think that that's down the road, but first comes advocacy and education of the parents and communication, saying, how can we combat this together? Thank you.
I put a note on the side of my page because I was looking at my notes and I had written down that the district's 5-year average for attendance is 90.12%. And that doesn't seem like a really bad number. It didn't seem that bad to me as a 10% difference, right? But then how is that calculated? How do we get to that number? Are the kids that are coming to school and going off to sports things being counted as present or absent for the day? Are medical appointments, which are excused, being added into those numbers? How does it affect those numbers? So I don't know, but that was a question that it raised to me, and maybe we need to look at how those things are defined. Obviously it's a unique challenge in our area, for mentioned reasons. I think we need to look at the consumer and customer base and say, are we really matching the needs of the students, the parents, our community, to how we're shaping that policy, and work with those people in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something I'd certainly put to the community to ask, what is it you want? We did this back, like several have alluded to, back in early 2020, but it quickly got forgotten. It was before this little thing called the pandemic, and priorities changed. But the general conclusion was, we did have a team back then that was put together of the superintendent, several teachers, some members from the community, and even a student advisor that was on that team. I think it was McKinsey. And the general conclusion was that a 4-day school week wasn't something they could recommend, because out of everything they looked at, there was no evidence that it's increased student achievement. Most of the studies that looked at why 4-day work, days were implemented, were pointed towards financial reasons for a district, and also just adult desires, things that the parents wanted but didn't necessarily reflect what was needed for students. So, yes, it's worth looking at again. I don't know that we'd actually see the rewards from it that we'd like to. And there's some collateral problems too. Just, it puts an increased burden on some parents. You've got a day now that they have to figure out childcare for. And, there are also issues when you leave children home unsupervised. So thank you.
Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
So across a lot of rural districts in several different states, 4-day weeks have been implemented for various reasons, cost saving, like you said, or teacher recruitment, or student enrichment, which is, a huge umbrella of what that can mean is a lot of different things. But I think I want to know also how the district would plan to or offer different models for how that, let's call it the 5th day, right, is used. So if you could potentially do longer school days, would that work? Would it doesn't? We mentioned that already. But what are the other options for all that time that needs to be made up? And there are a lot of possibilities. I won't go into details of them. But what I deeply appreciate is how unique our community is. So whether it's rural community here, there, or the other place, said it worked really well, that's one thing. We can ask questions of that. But yeah, we keep all going back to the same thing of asking families what works.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Mrs. Shreve first, and it comes from McKinley.
What is your position on career technical education? Should the district explore more than one graduation route? How can the district work to start using our shops full-time, increasing outside partnerships, and getting career and technical classes back into our schools?
Thanks, McKinley. So at the end of last school year, we were having a board meeting, and I remember Mr. Polta was bringing up some ideas and suggestions of things we can do to try to up our enrollment. And some of the things they were talking about was different trades offered at our school. And I like the idea a lot. I think it'd be great. I think the area that we live in would actually work really well with providing some of those opportunities. I know back when I was first coaching around here, there were some students that were a part of an EMT class, I think. And they were able to, I don't know, they did it every school year for a couple school years there, and they were able to kind of get some certifications and be able to move forward with that. And I could be way off base, but I remember some students being involved with that. But anyway, and I thought that was really great for those students. And I see that, we have the welding class in the mornings that is doing really well from what I hear. I know that Mr. Polt had mentioned like doing something with culinary or tourism, or we have all these opportunities in this area to take advantage of, and I think that we can do a lot of good things with it. So I would definitely am in support of that.
Yes, I'm 100% in support of bringing VOTEC into the school and also looking at different routes of graduation. One of the things back whenever I was in school, again, I graduated in 95. Back in about 1990, the superintendent at the time wanted to completely shut down the shop, and he wanted to move the shop and completely convert it into a computer lab. He said the world is changing and it needs to be a computer lab. And there was a bunch of people who were not supportive of that in this community. I think that we have a great shop. I think that we, the last time I was in there, they still have the welding bay, they still have the mechanic bay, they still have the woodworking shop. I think it needs to be put to use. There's a lot of students that go down the path of vocational training, especially from this area. And for us not to set them up to succeed, to go into that before they even go, I think that we're setting them up actually for failure. We're not setting them up to actually go into those career paths. Again, I know with the ETTs that we trained at the fire department and that also worked the internship with us, most of them right now are in some sort of public service, whether it comes to health and safety or protection. So I'm 100% for it.
I actually think for a pretty small school at Tri-Valley, we have quite a lot of options between the welding and that is an early morning class. It's got to get up before 8:30. The school to work program or building trades has been going on for a long time. And then we have a number of internships that are possible that can also serve as CTE credit. I think there were 6 students that did internships last spring with maybe 2 or 3 different organizations. I'd love to see that grow, to get kids out in the community to see what those jobs really are like. And then Anderson has, I know Mr. Superintendent Polt has been working a little bit with Clear Air Force Base to try, or Air Space Force, to try to set up internships out at Space Force Base. And I had forgotten about the emergency, the ETT program. That would be fabulous if we could get that going again, because yes, it is amazing how many medical professionals have come out of Tri-Valley. Thanks.
Yes, generally supportive of career and technical education. I agree with Dawn. We especially here in Tri-Valley, not so much at the other smaller sites. We've done pretty well. I would like to see the CTE not at the expense of academics. but in concert with academics. I think as an employer, a high school diploma is still pretty important. Supportive of potentially different graduation routes, but would have to look hard at what that looks like. I really appreciate the work that Mark Martin's doing here at Tri-Valley School, also exploring a bunch of different options and seeing what a bunch of different areas of relevancy to CTE. And would shout out I think one of the challenges is around enrollment, especially at the smaller sites, to adequately staff and consistently staff CTE offerings and have adequate demand for those. So the route of internships, working together with community members is a good solution going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. I'm full behind the program. I have personal knowledge of experience with the value of VOTEC. I think it's time to send out the messages to the community, mainly during the May and through September, of the organizations that create jobs for everyone around here, mainly in the Glitter Gulch area and in hospitality. This may be already being done. However, I think it's important to reach out to them even stronger and say, hey, we have these students are interested in hospitality. What can you do for us? They are guests in our area. I'm talking about the big operators. They are guests here. So it's important for them to understand that how can they support our young generation by making a difference and giving them an opportunity. I would think that somebody like a Bill Berglund at the Grand Denali would welcome any young adult that has the want to learn. He is the Da Vinci of Denali and would be an amazing mentor for the young men and women of our community.
I think this is an amazing opportunity for our kids to explore different types of skills, occupations within our community. I started with talking about sustaining our communities. This is a great option for them to learn to work and live and be and stay here in our local communities. The opportunities are amazing. And Mike was talking about more of them. One of the ones that went through wasn't my original idea, but expanding the building trades program to build local housing and create a relationship and partnership with the borough for land to put those on, and have it be a residual program to solve our community housing issues. Those kids learn cabin skills. They grow up, they get married, they need a place to live. Now they can go, and they've walked through the experience of purchasing land, building a cabin, connecting it to utilities, walking through those processes. We have sustainability of our community. Thank you.
Wow, it sounds like we're in full agreement here on this one, actually. And I couldn't agree more. I very much in favor of our CTE programs, and I'd love to see us expand them more. UCBelly and the National Park especially have been fantastic partners with us for years. And like we've said, especially around the area of building trades, I could see us expanding that even more too. I love the idea of local housing and building true houses too. Some of these smaller projects with the park don't get into the detailed electrical work that could lead to a journeyman and things like that. So I think we definitely should leverage that. I think the Denali learning model, kind of with its personalized learning plan for each student, lends itself to the potential for these alternate paths to graduation. The state of Alaska obviously has certain requirements that everybody has to have to graduate, basic courses, but we could take that in interesting directions ourselves as long as those bare minimum requirements were met. So totally agree. College degrees are not for every student, especially now. They're not what they were even 20 years ago for many of us. and they're not the only path to success.
Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
Yes, I'll sort of briefly. Yes, I agree that CTE is perfect. It's wonderful. I had the opportunity at my high school. I got tracked into academics. Just going to say that we want to make sure that it's not one or the other. We need to blend the two. Teachers also need to have that professional development and training to bring career tech into curriculum, so it's blended. And I do want to point out too that we've been talking a lot earlier about how schooling should strictly be language arts, math, social studies. But now we're all in agreement with a totally different model that is, I want to make sure it's all blended together. But in the foundation of both of those types of education, what you find is people who have learned critical thinking, partnership and collaboration, and creativity, right? And so you're right, like you can graduate with in many different pathways, but hopefully what we're learning are those foundations, regardless of the tools that get us there. So yes, and I just recently took carpentry and electrical because I sure did miss out on it.
As part of my job at UC Coal Mine, I do a lot of the HR work there, and it has really been a struggle to find good quality people that have gone through trades, whether it's heavy duty diesel mechanics, welders, even just truck drivers, any of that, equipment operators. That has really been a struggle for us. Electricians, really been a struggle for us to find and keep them there. And so I'm really in support of this, and I feel like there's a lot of ways that we can bridge that gap. I know that UC has had lots of students come out, Jack Whalen, and have those opportunities to work with our employees to increase their skills there. And I think it's such an important opportunity for us to continue to build those partnerships, out at Clear Space Force Station. Mr. Martin has started to develop this really great program. And I think the thought behind that was like, let's see how it goes after school to see how we can get that into our schools. How will that look? And so this is a journey that I think that we are committed to trying to develop. It's just a process.
Thank you. Our final question of the evening will go to Mr. Graham, and it comes from Elizabeth. The Alaska Board of Education and ASA recently voted to approve a ban on transgender athletes participating in girls' high school sports. The Mat-Su School Board recently banned trans students from using bathrooms and playing on sports teams that match their chosen gender identity. The Mat-Su Board also passed policies prohibiting activism from teachers and limiting school counselors to discussing academic matters only with students, except in the case of child abuse. LGBTQ books and materials in school libraries have also been a heated topic. This could likely be a topic the Denali Borough School Board will be tracking soon. What is your stance? Would you move in the same direction as Mat-Su or go a different route?
And I get this one first. Yeah, I'm not usually shy on whenever it comes to stuff like this. I 100% would be in agreement with the way that Mat-Su voted and implemented it, and I would track 100% with the way that they did it. As far as the LGBTQ books and materials in the school libraries, we have a very unique situation because we have a school library along with a public library. My personal opinion is, and it goes back to also some of the issues that have been brought up in the EL learning style whenever it comes to race, whether it comes to LGBT stuff, on and on and on. In my opinion, that is the parents' job to educate those students on that. And it's their job to get material whenever it comes to that. I would be very like for the kids to have access to that material in a school library. I am not for. But we are a public library as well. So it's not quite clear cut and dry, but there needs to be a way that the students aren't having access to it. So thank you.
Okay. I'm in 100% disagreement with the Matsu School Board. When this borough, if I have the creation story right, when this borough formed, it was because we didn't want to be part of the Matsu borough, because we wanted to retain local control and home rule, because it was important to us that the people in this community helped guide the schools and how we spent money and what powers we had. So I don't typically turn to the Matsu in our policy meetings to figure out what does their policy say about this. We'll go to Fairbanks, we'll look at Glen Allen, Copper Center, Sitka, Anchorage. What do these schools think? What are they doing about the policies? In this era of serious mental health issues for everyone, but in particular young adults and children, I think hamstringing teachers and counselors in their ability to be that trusted adult that a child might need outside the home is ridiculous. Like this school, it takes a village, right? This school is a really important place. These teachers are really important people in our students' lives. And I think we really need to be careful about borrowing national headlines and applying them to our schools and communities. We can't fear information and conversations. And we're hiding in the dark if we think our kids aren't exposed to this stuff outside of our home.
I don't see our board or our communities, or I would hope, and I don't see our board taking on such prohibitive tactics. I don't believe that that's reflective of our borough's communities. Our mission statement, which was crafted by members of all of our communities, was first and foremost to work together and to nurture, empower, and inspire our students. That first word is nurture. I believe in as regards to this issue, many of us are listening too much to our fellow grown-ups and not as much to students. So I would hope that in every decision that we make, that we are consulting with and listening to students. And I feel it's our role also to support students as they learn and grow and figure out how they choose to navigate society and social norms. That is part of our role. And I think a strategy for anyone or any group who is marginalized by society is to be inclusive and supportive rather than exclusive or prohibitive.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. I believe that parents should have the conversation with their children about what's going on in the world, not to keep them in the dark. I think that we are born in two sexes. There's male and there's female, and that males competing against females because they identify as trans is not safe, nor is it fair, or the other way around. I think it's important that the school focuses on, yes, being the most important part of a child's experience in education, together with parents, and to have that. I necessarily don't want to identify that Matsu is 100% right. I agree that we need to look at other small communities and what they're doing, so that we can see what's working for them. Regarding school books in the school, I am not for banning books. However, I am about making sure that books that are able for young adults to get to make sense in a school district or a school library. So I would like to look at, is it appropriate that we have two libraries that circumvent one another, that allow access to a child that may not like to, parent may not want them to be a part of that. Thank you.
So this question was very complex for me because I felt that it really addressed several very large issues. I support and applaud the approach that Matsu took. I'm not saying that everything they did was right, but they took it down to the level of why would we do these things? For example, in female sports, women have fought for years for sports teams. When I was in high school, we didn't have women's teams. We had to appeal to our school board for our soccer team to have a girls' team. Even though we had enough players to have a team, we had to ask to have a team because the only one that they were enrolled in to participate was a men's league. I'm going to way go over time, but so I applaud them. And I think that male physical superiority doesn't belong in that competition. Second, I think that they're limiting activism in the classroom and in the educational process is good. And that there's a difference between a discussion process and an actual advocating of a particular political, religious, or social philosophy. And I second what Rob was saying about the libraries feeding both the let me finish the public and the school. And good sense needs to be used. There we go.
I have to keep a straight face. It is a huge question, but very important. So I'm going to read through my notes on this one as fast as possible. The first part of the question regarding sports participation is straightforward. We'll adhere to ASA regulations. It's a statewide requirement and we don't control it. When it comes to books, the board has never attempted to ban any, and I wouldn't support such an action in the future. I do support making sure content for certain ages in appropriate places, but bathrooms should never become battlegrounds. What Matsu's actions were deliberately divisive, and they might not even stand up in court. Federal Title IX legislation may force them to roll much of what they did back. In our own schools, if we can remodel a facility for a unisex private bathroom to accommodate what we need to, then we should. And it's not because we're picking a side, it's because it's the right thing to do. Our district's mission is to nurture all students, regardless of personal beliefs. Every student is worthy of kindness and respect. More broadly, I'd like to offer some words of caution that these divisive topics are nothing new in our society, going back thousands of years. But in recent years, they've been used for political gain and power in especially egregious ways. They do nothing to help education and student achievement. And the truth is, there are no winners. These arguments, when one side attacks another, it comes right back. And in the end, the students caught in the middle are who suffer.
Mrs. Crowley, you may begin.
I'll try and address each of them briefly. First, I know my personal stance on all these things, but that isn't what I can bring to a board. My job is to listen to all of you, synthesize, gather research, understand what's happened before, what's happening other places, bring that back to my community and back and forth. I'm offering that effort is what I'm offering. The thing about looking into it is that what happened in the Matsu resulted in a vote of no confidence by teachers that are union and non-union, libraries and staff. And it resulted in a student walkout. So a few people said, students have a voice too. So keep that in mind in terms of what they tried to do and how it was received. So that's part of what I wanted to at least educate on what's going on in here too. It also said that it was the perceived activism of teachers. And I want to say that I absolutely support the advocacy of teachers, respect, safety, mental health, and fear of retaliation or intimidation. We have to stand with those teachers. And lastly, LGBT books was a heated topic, as it says. I think the heated topic was transparency and knowing what policies are.
One of the functions of the school board is to set policy. And so policy that is within the bounds of the laws and the regulations that are put before us. So the policy is what governs and manages the school district. The district has in place policies that address library use. And I will ensure that those policies will be upheld in making those decisions. I do believe in doing what is best for all students, always. That's going to look different to me. That's going to look different for you. But being kind and respectful to all is always going to be taught and followed, I hope, in this Denali Borough School District. We never have to sacrifice our beliefs or values to be kind to anyone. So I'm going to put my HR hat on for just a second and tell you that there are always rules and there are laws. And when rules are not followed, you open up yourselves to lawsuits, and lawsuits cost money. And I know I've talked a lot about money, money that the district does not have to fight those lawsuits, but being kind is free.
This was really hard to answer. I do firmly believe that we need to follow the rules that are already set in place, and also has rules that we follow for sports, and we, like Kristen said, we have policies that we follow. My personal stance on things, I think that this all my biggest comment I want to say with this is, let's not take away the role of parenting. Sometimes educators, or sometimes school districts, or sometimes education as a whole, or whatever, we try to take away the responsibility of parents to teach our children what we want to. I know it gets hard because sometimes not every child has supportive at home life, or it gets tricky, or it gets messy, and it's not clean cut, and it's not black and white. But my voice will always be in support of letting parents be involved with their education, and something like this. I think that a lot of these topics in this question are for parents to talk about with their students. It shouldn't be up to school board to decide some of these things. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, like, this is a parent's job, and this is what parents should be doing. And like it's been said before, we have an interesting situation where our library is a public library and a school library. So I agree, echo what has been said before, but I think, yeah, let's let parents get back to being parents.
Thank you. We will now give each candidate an opportunity to present a 2-minute closing speech. We will start with Mrs. Adams.
Thank you. This has been very interesting and fruitful, and I have lots of notes, because that's just what I do. I take lots of notes, and a lot of the ideas here from different candidates I think will be useful no matter which 7 people are sitting on that school board. And I guess thank you to the students and the teachers who support having forums like this. And thank you to everyone who's shown up here, because you're engaging in the community's education of their students, and we appreciate that. And I want us to remember that today's student isn't living in the early 2000s. Their world that they are entering is changing much faster than what most of us experienced as students and young adults. And let's keep that in mind, that our experiences, our kids' experiences are very different. It's hard for me to keep that in mind as a parent. But I continue to believe in the mission of the Denali Borough School District and all 925 students it serves.
Ready? Okay. Yeah, so thank you guys all for putting this on tonight. I really appreciate all the students and the staff that made this happen. It takes your time, but it also shows that you're involved in what's going on, that you guys want to see your hand be in this next election and just the future of the Denali Borough. You know, for me, most of you guys know me, some of you guys don't. I'm running for this seat. And it's, if I don't get elected, I'm not going to be, my feelings aren't going to get hurt. Like I've told my wife from the very get-go that this next election with everybody, with all these seats being up, there's a lot of people running for seats right now. There's a lot of people running for mayor. There's a lot of people running for borough assembly and for the school board. We haven't seen that kind of community involvement for people wanting to run for these seats in a long time. And it shows me that there is a divide in the way that that people want the borough to go, the way they want the school to go. And so the way I look at it is, you know, I'm pretty upfront about what I believe. If you're on, you know, board with what I believe, well, then if the majority is that, then I'll get elected. And if not, then the borough is going to get what the borough wants. And the other thing too is as a school board member, you know, we're supposed to be a voice for the people that we represent. That's the same thing that goes for the borough assembly. And so not holding up, you know, not going in and just running after people's own agendas, but also to really taking a poll and seeing what does the community want, and then be a voice for that community and implement what the community wants. It shouldn't be for our own agenda. It should be for the students and for the community at large. That's why.
Thank you. I just wanted to end with saying, I am here running and have been on the school board for a year because I am a mom that wanted to definitely be involved, but I wanted to be there for my students. And then I wanted to, I don't know, just, I guess just be a part of the thing. But what I really want to make sure that people understand about me is I don't know a lot about school board stuff, as you probably could clearly tell. I don't know a lot, but I do know how to learn. I do know that I want to learn, and I'm going to do whatever I can to learn those things. And I'm grateful for the opportunities I've been given. I'm grateful for the chance I get to be here. And thank you, the high school students, for putting this on for us. This is great.
Thank you for a wonderful evening. It's always great to get with the community and share with you the things that we feel like are important. I've learned a lot since being on the school board, and sometimes it's our turn to educate as well sometimes. And so I kind of wanted to share with you the 5 things that the school board is really responsible for. We manage and hire a superintendent. We work on the curriculum. We set policy. We deal with the budget, and we advocate for our schools at Juneau. Those are the 5 things that as a board member, those are the things that we are responsible for. I would encourage, no matter how this goes down, come to the school board meetings. There's a lot of education that happens there. You can learn about the Denali learning model. You can learn about the policies. You can learn. And it's a great opportunity to be able to be engaged in all of our children's education. Pie nights are another great thing. And I know some of the other schools also do something, that there is a rich opportunity for education so that you can know what's going on in the school. I think that we have a lot of academic success in this school. Oftentimes, sorry, I don't know what the deal is, that our athletes are successful. They often get awards, and we're kind of known as like the nerdy school. And that's fine. We love the nerd awards, and that's great. And it's important. It's not just our athletes, it's our musicians, it's our people involved in other things. We are doing something well. They do well. And I just hope that it's nice to see everybody running, because that means that you want to understand what a school board member does and what a successful school board can do. So put in the work and understand what a school board does. So thanks.
Ms. Crowley, you may begin.
All right. The number one question I get from people when I say I'm running for school board, they're like, you don't have any kids. Why? And I'm like, you're right, I don't have kids. But the very first year I was teaching, I knew this is what I was going to do. I was going to be in education. And that path has taken me to working with administrations and school boards and teachers around the country at an international level, that collaboration. And it just, for me, the Denali community that I've been a part of for 15 years, I've found different ways where I can contribute on different boards and volunteering for different organizations. And maybe this is the next one because of the experience I have. But I do want to say that my mom, in her career late in her life, she taught me that as she was fighting on the national level for parents' right to raise their kids, number one. But education is kind of a separate thing. They certainly are overlapping. And that's what I want to bring, is that piece of, I understand what it takes in that huge scope of what education can be. And Mike, I'm so glad you brought up Outward Bound, because one of those pillars is my favorite, of compassion, right? And they talk about sort of that sense of belonging for folks, and that's what I want in our schools. And they also talk about undoing systems that don't work anymore and reinforcing equality. And then, yeah, I don't know, I could list the things that I can offer: grant writing, collaboration, partnerships, all of those things. But creativity and compassion and an excitement to make change, or look at what we've done and make it better.
Thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you especially to the students and the team that's put this all on. This is exactly what political discourse in a healthy way should look like, in my opinion. It gives me hope when I compare this to what we see at the national level sometimes. Having well-informed voters is exactly what we want, and it's okay to disagree on things, and I respect everyone in this room. So it's been good to see. I will encourage everybody to vote either early or on November 7th, because it is absolutely critical in this election. And I know it's a tremendous amount of information that has come at you tonight too. So I'll just offer that if anybody would like to follow up with me later personally, I'll be glad to talk to you one-on-one. Pretty easy contact information. I'm just james@tench.com if you want to email me, but I'm also easy to get on Facebook, and my phone number's all over the place out there. So I'd love to talk to you if you want to hear more. Again, this has been really good to see tonight. And I actually believe that as a borough, we have a lot more in common together than differences. And at the core of it, we all are doing this because we care about all these students, maybe for different reasons or want to do it different ways, but our objective is the same. So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Second all of the motions of thanking all of the people that were involved in this event, Frisbee and all of his students and students that step up and volunteer. That's half the battle, stepping up. I just jotted some notes too about we are a very unique district supporting 3 unique communities. I think we need to continue to build that together. We have many, many opportunities to partner with organizations in our community. As a business owner in the community, I love teaching people about things, cooking, food preservation. I have students that I'm teaching to sew, adult students that I'm teaching to sew. Skills-based education is important in my world. And I had one of my daughters that graduated from the school was very hands-on. She was the only student in her class that had keys to the wood shop here. It was a great opportunity for her to learn and grow in this community. And I would love to take my experience and donate it to the cause here as a school board member, and start developing more of those relationships and building opportunities in our community, and with other community partners all the way around. I think this is a great opportunity to serve and to listen and to build and to sustain our own community. Thank you.
Mr. Green, you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you to all the individuals that arrived tonight to be part of this, both in Zoom and in person. Thank you to the school and to the young adults that are facilitating this very important meeting. Why vote for me? Great question. Why vote for me? I believe that being on the school board is not easy, but it's the right thing to do when you want to make a change, you want to make a difference. And I'm grateful for those who have participated in the school board, whether it be a short term or even a long term. I believe that we all have the great intentions here to support our community in the best way we know how. We bring things to the table. What I bring to the table when it comes to voting for me is years and years of service, understanding what service looks like, supporting leadership, supporting people's ability to lead, to communicate well with individuals as well as communities. For me, it's very important that we as a community acknowledge that this is a volunteer position, and I am not going to vote and make you 100% happy with my votes. I can tell you that I will do my very best to vote with an open mind and a level head when it comes to all things. Much like Rob said and others, it's not about us, it's about what the community wants and what's better for the community. If you vote for me, you're voting for an individual that believes in the sanctity of a parent raising a child, and the belief, and I believe in our teachers in this beautiful school, that they are going to do a good job to teach or educate them. 1997, I came for the mountains and stayed for the people. Been here ever since. Vote for Mike Green. Thank you.
I'm going to take the opportunity to do a little bit of catch up because I would like to first and foremost correct a little bit of gloom and doom statistics about student performance data, and also to stand up for students, because some of the data that was cited earlier tonight made it sound like you are failing or that you are below average. And please, every student, please know that our board, all of our board members think you are well above average. According to the fall map testing data for Tri-Valley School is what I have, our school ranks among all students, K through 12, 63rd, in the 63rd percentile for math, 68th for reading, and 69th for language usage. That's the most recent test results. And hopefully, it's very difficult to compare district-wide testing going back into the past, because it's very hard to compare apples to apples. Hopefully, finally, now we have a more robust and testing system going forward that will allow us to make those year-to-year comparisons. But just I guess I would also say that our board thinks our teachers are well above average too. It was right here at Tri-Valley School. I was only here for my elementary grades, but some of my teachers, memorable teachers, were Elaine Pollock and Myrtle, especially Myrtle Gurgitz and Tom Formella. But one of my favorite teachers of all through all of my schooling was Brian Sweat, and he was a mentor and whose memory of his teaching has carried with me. I have been 9 years on the school board. I've been on the policy committee for a number of years and currently sit on the legislative committee and enjoy that work, helping to share our district stories down in Juneau. Our livelihood, my livelihood is out at Camp Denali, where we're stewards of a little corner of Denali National Park. I wanted you to toot that horn. Anyway, I'm happy to continue serving the community that supports our livelihoods here in the Denali Borough.
Thank you all. The Tri-Valley 11th and 12th grade English class would like to thank our school staff for all your help. Thank you to our community members for your questions. And finally, thank you to the candidates for answering some tough questions and being willing to represent our communities and borough.
After the forum, there will be a meet and greet to ask any other questions you may have. Thank you and have a wonderful night.